Alien Huntress tracks human to sacred death pool. He cannonballs into forbidden waters. It was a quiet afternoon in the heart of a dense, ancient jungle, the air thick with the sounds of birds and insects, all hidden deep within the lush green canopy. The forest, as old as the earth itself, held secrets passed down through generations. Among those secrets was a place known only to a few, a place that was both sacred and feared. It was called the Death Pool. The stories surrounding it were enough to keep any curious soul at bay. Yet for some, like the young alien Huntress, the desire to protect these sacred grounds was as natural as breathing. Zara, the Huntress, moved through the jungle with the silent grace of a shadow. She was tall and strong, with dark hair that blended into the shadows of the forest. Her eyes were sharp and observant, always alert to any movement. Zara had been trained in the ways of the wild for as long as she could remember. She had been taught to track, to hunt, and to protect her people's most treasured sites. And the death pool was one of those sacred places that needed protecting. For centuries, her people had kept the pool hidden from the outside world. They understood its power and knew what happened to those who dared to disturb it. But Zara's peaceful life in the jungle had been disrupted recently. There had been rumors of a human, one of the daring explorers who had been seen near the jungle's edge. Humans, with their endless curiosity, had always been a threat to places like the death pool. They didn't understand the significance of such sacred sites. To them, it was just another location to explore, another treasure to claim. Zara had been sent to track him down and ensure he didn't wander into forbidden territory. She moved through the underbrush with care, her steps light but deliberate. The path was narrow, and her senses were on high alert. She could hear the crunch of leaves underfoot, the sound of branches swaying with the wind. Every so often she would pause, her eyes scanning the surroundings. Her sharp ears could pick up the faintest sounds, a twig snapping, the rustle of leaves. The Huntress had been tracking this human for hours, following the trail he had left behind. It wasn't hard to follow him. Humans weren't as skilled at covering their tracks as Zara and her people were. It was clear he had no idea where he was going, no understanding of the land he was treading on. Zara knew that if he continued on this path, he would reach the death pool in no time. As she moved deeper into the jungle, the air grew cooler. She could feel the presence of the sacred waters ahead, the energy that surrounded the pool. There was a sense of stillness, a heavy silence that hung in the air. Zara had always felt the power of the death pool, the way it seemed to hum with ancient energy. It was a place of mystery, a place where those who disrespected it were said to be swallowed whole by the waters, never to be seen again. Zara quickened her pace. She had to reach him before it was too late. She wasn't sure what this human would do once he arrived at the pool, but she knew it would not end well. The legend spoke of those who had entered the waters before, people who had been lost forever, their bodies never recovered. Zara couldn't let that happen to him. Even though she didn't know much about humans, she knew they didn't deserve to meet such a tragic fate. Finally, after what felt like hours, Zara spotted him. He was standing at the edge of a clearing, gazing out at the shimmering waters of the death pool. His expression was one of awe and curiosity, completely unaware of the danger he was about to step into. Zara crouched low in the shadows, watching him. The human seemed to be lost in the beauty of the place, mesmerized by the crystal-clear waters that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. She could see the way his hands clenched in excitement, as though he were about to discover some great treasure. He didn't understand. The water was not a treasure. It was a force, an ancient force that should never be disturbed. The Huntress gritted her teeth and stepped forward, her body tensed with anticipation. She had to stop him before he made the fatal mistake of entering the waters. She had heard the legends too, but she had never seen the death pool up close. Now, as she watched the human, she understood why the pool was so dangerous. It wasn't just the waters. It was the curse that surrounded it. The sacred site had been protected for centuries, not just by her people, but by the natural forces of the land. and once the waters were disturbed, there was no going back. Heat tension in the air grew thicker as Zara observed the human from her hidden position. She could feel her pulse quicken as he stepped closer to the water. Her heart pounded in her chest. He still didn't understand. She knew he was fascinated by the sparkling, inviting waters of the death pool. To him it probably seemed like an untouched paradise, a hidden gem in the middle of a dense jungle. But Zara knew the truth. The waters were cursed, and any person who dared to enter would be lost forever. She clenched her fists, her body stilling as she prepared to spring into action. The human was right there, just a few steps away from crossing the line he should never cross. Zara had been trained to protect these sacred grounds, and she would not let anyone disturb them. She couldn't let him make this mistake. She stepped forward, moving silently through the underbrush. The human was still unaware of her presence, but Zara knew time was running out. Her mind raced as she thought about the legends she had heard growing up. She had always been warned about the consequences of disturbing the death pool. But it wasn't until now, in this moment, that she truly understood the weight of the warnings. She knew that if he took one more step, the pool's power would pull him under, and there would be no saving him. The human would become another lost soul, swallowed by the ancient waters. Zara pushed her thoughts aside and focused on the task at hand. She had to stop him. Without making a sound, she moved closer, her eyes locked on the human as he crouched near the edge of the water. His hands hovered above the surface, as if deciding whether to touch the water or not. Zara knew this was her last chance to intervene. The Huntress felt a surge of determination rise within her. She couldn't let him suffer the fate of those who had come before him, those who had made the same mistake. It wasn't just her duty to protect this sacred place. It was her responsibility. She was the one chosen to keep watch to ensure that the death pool remained undisturbed. No human, no matter how curious or daring, could be allowed to destroy the peace that had been preserved for centuries. In one swift motion, Zara emerged from the shadows, her presence sudden and commanding. She stepped into the clearing, blocking the human's path. Her gaze was fierce and her posture exuded confidence. She had expected him to be startled, but what surprised her was the look on his face. He didn't appear frightened or angry. Instead, he seemed more confused than anything. The human stood frozen, staring at Zara, his hand still hovering above the water. For a moment, neither of them moved. Zara could sense the confusion in his eyes, but there was something else there, too. Curiosity. She knew that humans often acted on instinct, driven by a desire to explore and discover. But this was no place for exploration. This was a sacred site, and Zara would do anything to protect it. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension. Zara stood tall and unwavering, her eyes never leaving the human's face. She needed to make him understand. He couldn't go any further. "You can't go in," Zara said, her voice steady but firm. She had practiced these words many times in her mind, but now that she was saying them out loud, they felt heavier than she had imagined. "The water, it's dangerous." The human blinked in surprise, his gaze shifting from Zara to the shimmering water before him. He seemed to process her words slowly, as if unsure of what to make of them. Zara took a step closer, her eyes narrowing slightly. She could feel the weight of the moment settling in. He had to understand the gravity of the situation. "I'm serious," Zara continued, her tone softening just a fraction. "This is not a place to play. You don't know what's in there." The human shook his head slowly, a skeptical look crossing his face. Zara could see the gears turning in his mind. He didn't believe her. Maybe he thought she was just another local trying to scare him away. Or maybe he thought the stories were nothing more than myths. But Zara knew better. She knew that no one ever came back from the death pool. No one who had ever entered had survived. Her heart sank as she watched him take another step toward the water, Zara's instincts screamed at her to stop him before it was too late. She couldn't let him walk into the same trap that had claimed so many others before him. But just as she was about to move, the human did something unexpected. He stopped. For the first time since Zara had appeared, he looked directly at her. Really looked at her. His expression softened slightly, and there was a flicker of understanding in his eyes. It wasn't much, but it wasn't enough for Zara to see that he wasn't entirely oblivious to the danger anymore. Perhaps, just perhaps, he was starting to realize that this was no ordinary place. The Huntress didn't lower her guard, but she allowed herself a brief moment of hope. Maybe he wasn't completely lost. Maybe he could be saved from the curse of the death pool. But as the human stood there, staring at her, Zara realized that he hadn't come this far to turn back so easily. The pull of the water, the allure of the unknown, was too strong. Zara knew she had to act fast. She couldn't wait any longer. The human would make his move, and if she didn't stop him now, it might be too late. Without warning, the human took a deep breath, a determined look crossing his face. Before Zara could react, he sprinted toward the water, his body tensing as he leaped into the air. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Time itself seemed to stretch as the human soared over the surface of the death pool. Zara's heart skipped a beat, and her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The human cannonballed into the water, sending a massive splash into the air. The sound of the water crashing echoed through the jungle, a sharp, loud noise that seemed to signal the disturbance of something ancient. The shockwave rippled through the trees, and for a moment, Zara could feel the weight of the jungle's energy shift. The death pool had been disturbed. Zara wasted no time. She sprinted toward the edge of the water, her heart racing with fear. She knew she had to act quickly, or the human would be lost to the waters forever. She dove into the pool without hesitation, her body cutting through the water as she swam toward where the human had disappeared. The water felt colder than she had expected, and the current was stronger than she remembered. It was as if the pool itself was resisting her, fighting to keep its secrets hidden beneath its surface. Beneath the water, the human flailed in the dark depths, struggling against the powerful currents that seemed to pull him deeper and deeper. His body was being sucked toward the center of the pool, where the water grew darker and more dangerous. Zara's eyes scanned the water frantically, searching for him. She couldn't let him be swallowed by the death pool, not like this. She finally saw him, his arm reaching out, his face twisted in panic. Zara pushed forward, her muscles burning with the effort. She reached out, grabbing the human's arm and pulling him toward the surface. The struggle was fierce, but Zara didn't let go. She couldn't. She had to get him out of there. The jungle had already taken so much. She couldn't allow the pool to claim another victim. Finally, with one last powerful stroke, Zara pulled the human to the surface. They broke through the water together, gasping for air, both exhausted from the fight against the current. The jungle's oppressive silence returned as they floated, the ripples in the water slowly fading away. Zara clung to the human, her breath shallow, her body trembling with the strain. She had saved him, but she knew the cost. The death pool was not a place that let go of its victims so easily. As the human coughed and sputtered, still disoriented from the struggle, Zara understood that the pool's power had already marked him. He would never be the same after this. But for now, he was alive, and that was enough. As the human and Zara floated in the water, the jungle around them seemed to hold its breath. The ripples from their struggle slowly faded, and an eerie calm settled over the death pool. The quiet was almost oppressive, as if the very land was mourning the disturbance. Zara could feel the weight of the ancient power that surrounded them, and for a moment, she wasn't sure whether it was the jungle's force or something else that held her in place. The human's body was still trembling in her arms. His chest heaved with each labored breath, and Zara could feel his heartbeat, frantic and unsteady. He had narrowly escaped the pool's deadly grasp, but the journey was far from over. The water had taken something from him. Zara had seen it before, in the eyes of those who had come too close to the sacred waters and lived to tell the tale. There was a hollow look in their gaze, an emptiness that could never be fully filled. She knew the death pool didn't just take life, it took part of the soul, too. Zara gently guided the human toward the shore, her arms moving with practiced precision as she pulled them both closer to safety. She wasn't sure if the human fully understood what had just happened, but she knew one thing for certain. He couldn't stay here. The jungle was watching, and the forces that protected the death pool would never forgive such an intrusion. She had saved him, but now she had to protect him from the consequences of his actions. As they reached the bank, Zara carefully helped him out of the water. His legs wobbled beneath him, clearly weakened from the struggle. Zara's strong hands gripped his shoulders, steadying him as he tried to regain his balance. The human looked up at her, his eyes wide with disbelief and exhaustion. His breath still came in quick, shallow bursts, and he blinked as if trying to clear the fog from his mind. "Why?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Why did you stop me?" Zara didn't answer right away. She knelt beside him, her eyes scanning the surroundings, ever watchful. She could feel the jungle's presence pressing in, the ancient energy of the death pool lingering like a cloud in the air. The jungle had its own way of dealing with intruders, and she knew it wasn't done yet. The human's actions had set something in motion that couldn't be undone. The death pool didn't take kindly to those who disturbed its peace, and though Zara had pulled him from the depths, she knew he wasn't free from its grip. "You don't understand," Zara said finally, her voice calm but firm. She kept her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the dense trees seemed to close in around them. "The death pool is not just water. It's a force, ancient, powerful. It doesn't forgive." The human looked at her with confusion, his brows furrowing as if trying to make sense of her words. Zara could see the disbelief still in his eyes. He had no idea what the death pool truly was, no idea what it had cost to protect it. To him, it had probably seemed like an adventure, a place to test his courage. But for Zara and her people, it was a sacred place, a place that held the balance of the jungle and its waters. And now that balance had been disrupted. The consequences of that would soon make themselves known. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and finally spoke again. "But I didn't mean to harm it. I didn't know." Zara nodded slowly, understanding his confusion. It wasn't his fault. He was just another curious wanderer who had found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. But that didn't change the fact that the jungle had been disturbed, and that disturbance would not go unnoticed. "You didn't mean to?" she repeated softly, almost to herself, "but the jungle knows. And the waters, they never forget." The human fell silent, his gaze drifting toward the death pool. Zara could see the regret settling in, the realization that he had made a mistake, though it was too late to take it back. She could only hope that the lessons of this encounter would stay with him. Maybe the jungle would show him mercy. Maybe he would return to his world with a new understanding of the forces that lay hidden in places like this. But one thing was certain. He would never forget the experience. The jungle had a way of leaving its mark, and the death pool's touch was not one that could be easily erased. Zara took a slow breath, her eyes narrowing as she surveyed the path ahead. She had done what she could, but she knew her task wasn't over. The jungle would test the human again, and she had to be ready to protect him, whether he wanted her help or not. She had seen the consequences of disturbing the death pool before. People who thought they could walk away unscathed. People who never came back. She couldn't let that happen to him. Her gaze softened for a moment as she looked at the human. There was a flicker of understanding in his eyes now, a quiet acknowledgement that he had made a mistake. But Zara knew this was just the beginning of a much larger journey. The jungle's forces would not simply let him go. The death pool had marked him, and it was only a matter of time before the jungle would demand its payment. The human shivered, whether from the cold water or from the weight of the situation. Zara couldn't tell. He opened his mouth to speak again, but Zara raised her hand, signaling for him to remain silent. It wasn't time for words. Time for words would come later. For now, they both needed to leave the pool's reach. Zara helped him to his feet, and they began the long walk back through the jungle. With every step, Zara remained alert, her senses stretched to their limits. She could feel the jungle watching, the eyes of the ancient trees and hidden creatures trained on them. There was no escape from the jungle's watchful gaze. As they moved deeper into the heart of the jungle, Zara couldn't help but wonder what would happen to the human after this. Would he be able to walk away and forget the lesson the death pool had tried to teach him? Or would the jungle's curse stay with him, a constant reminder of the day he had come too close to the waters that should never be disturbed? Only time would tell.